Hey, what's up guys? My name is Josh and Apple just released their AirPods MAX. Pretty interesting move. A little bit about me and about this channel. So I review audio equipment. I review primarily high-end audio equipment. So I'm kind of looking at this from a high-end audio equipment perspective. Now today I want to go over what I expect from this product, the type of customer that I think is going to work for this, and whether or not I think the price is justified from an outsider's perspective. So some biases here. I own and really enjoy a lot of Apple products. I have the Apple Watch, I have the iPhone, I have the iPad Pro, I have the MacBook Pro, I have the Apple TV, I have the AirPods Pro. Now, just because I own those doesn't mean I'm an Apple fanboy. I'm actually quite critical of this company, and I own and kind of enjoy more a lot of non-Apple products I daily drive and work off of a PC, for example. The design language is certainly something that we've seen before from Apple, and the funny part is that this actually seems to take a lot of the influences from their watch, which I would not have called, specifically in the shapes of the ear cups and things like the crown that present on the top of the ear cups on one of the headphones. So there's a lot of similar influences that a lot of Apple users are probably going to be fairly familiar with. This also comes in a multitude of different color options. I think if I were to pick one, it'd probably be white for me. And there are some things on this device that I do want to draw specific attention to. One is just the overall construction quality. Apple makes really well constructed stuff for the most part. I think their weakest construction compared to competition is probably their actual watch, like compared to other $400 and $500 legitimate watches. The construction really doesn't quite meet up, but it does have all sorts of technology that those watches don't have. So, it's a balancing act there, but in terms of actual construction, it's not as strong as some like real steel and titanium watches at that price. But in my opinion, everything else that they make for construction is usually among the best in that price tag compared to other tech items. And this headphone, I actually expect to be that. If you look at some of the Sony competitors and some of the Bose competitors, if this is built as well as it looks like it is, and as well as the rest of Apple products, this is going to be quite superior in terms of build compared to a lot of other stuff. Now on the cups, I couldn't actually find it on their website. It looks like the cups and the shell on the outside is made of metal. I don't think it's made of plastic. It could be, but it looks like metal to me. On the yokes, they're definitely using a polished stainless steel. And then they kind of have this mesh net in between two bars that go along the top of the headband. I think the design actually looks quite nice and quite comfortable. The ear pads I'm a little concerned about because not everybody likes that sort of mesh design, especially if you have a beard or longer hair. It might kind of mess with that. And I have seen mesh designs like that in the past, specifically on headphones, cheaper headphones actually, like the SHP 9500s that get pretty hot over time. So we'll see how Apple implements it. I think comfort for this is going to come down to the weave, the foam, and the material that they choose to use within that mesh. Now, some other notable things about the build are the 40mm dynamic drivers. In this price range, you'll start to see the inclusion on some higher end headphones of planar magnetic drivers. And those are generally the two types. You have a dynamic driver, which is what you're probably all used to seeing in speakers and in most headphones. And then in the high-end world, you start getting into planars, and planars work quite a bit differently. Planars use magnets on either side of a substrate to create the sound, but dynamic drivers like the AirPods MAX are going to use kind of a neodymium donut to kind of push a kind of a speaker cone design. You could also look at it like a dome of specified material. Now, one note on the build and the placement of this driver, if you actually look at the spread apart picture on this, it actually seems like the mount for this driver is actually pretty far back, which I think is a good thing. A lot of people who produce closed back headphones unfortunately put the driver pretty close to the ear. This can have some benefits, but usually in my experience, it results in a sound that's not particularly as enjoyable as it could. The further you move it back inside that cup though, they're going to have to be dealing with a little bit more control over the acoustic chamber and the reflections that are going on inside the cup than they would if they moved it forward. But the capability of the driver further back is a little bit greater, and they have more flexibility. And obviously Apple knows that. So I think this will result in two things: better sound and better comfort, because more ears are going to have more flexibility depth-wise inside the cup to fit. So I think this is probably a better move as far as closed back headphones go. Okay, so the performance, typical Apple claims are, over the moon performance, great performance. Unfortunately, they didn't release many specs that you would see to be common for most headphones. Like, they haven't output any sort of frequency response graph. In fact, the only thing on here that they say is that it is sub 1% total harmonic distortion between the human hearing range, which should be between about 20 hertz and about 20,000 hertz. That's what's considered industry standard for human hearing. Less than 1% total harmonic distortion is going to be a kind of a tall order. I'd be really curious on what their measurement system is going to be, because there's all sorts of different standards for measuring this sort of stuff for actual headphones. But I'm also one of those users who don't think graphs really mean all that much. So I'm not going to harp on them too much for that. But I will say that for them to achieve this, they're going to have to fix a number of known issues with some pretty common things. So one, there's going to be the Bluetooth layer that the signal has to transfer through. Then they're going to have the DAC, which is going to decode that Bluetooth and convert it to an analog signal for the amplifier inside the headphones to then push out. Then you have the physical limitations and the mechanics of the driver itself. So there's a lot of barriers that they're going to have to overcome in order to actually achieve that. If they can do it, great. But only time will tell when third parties end up measuring that. Inside, they do have their H1 chip that will be decoding all of the audio stuff. And then they also have a number of features like obviously Bluetooth, active noise cancellation, spatial audio. They have a pass-through mode, or they will play the sounds from the outside world. And then they have custom EQ. I'm not sure what the flexibility of the EQ options are going to be. The battery life, they say, is going to be about 20 hours. And it seems like this device is actually always on. But when it's in standby mode, it's just sucking a very little amount of power. I say this because the phrasing that they use for their case, they say specifically that it enters a ultra low battery mode when it enters the soft touch case that they have with this. So I'm thinking that this is an always on device, but if they're getting 20 hours of actual playtime back, that's pretty reasonable for a standard pair of Bluetooth headphones. Though not the greatest in the industry, it's definitely far from the worst. And then they do have one cool feature that was appealing to me, which is the audio sharing, which according to them, one tap will transfer and share the audio from the headphones to another device like an iPad, Apple TV, etc., etc. So that's we'll see how well that works. But so far it looks pretty promising because Apple's usually good with connectivity. Okay, so if you have questions, I think it's going to boil down to this. Is it worth it? I guess this is a little bit complicated. I think the build quality for the price is probably going to be one of the better built headphones of any type of Bluetooth headphones, of full-size headphones that are wired. I think the build quality looks promising. I have high hopes for Apple's build quality for the actual construction. The software is probably actually going to run pretty well. I have really good experience with their AirPods Pro software. I have no reason to think that their full-size headphone, the Max, is going to differentiate very far from that. So I think that's probably going to be pretty solid. Their claims in terms of battery life is probably a little optimistic because Apple usually is, but even with 10% margin of error or something like that, that's still pretty good battery life. Now, I believe that not only the build quality, but the sound quality will probably outcompete most of the other kind of head-to-head competitors that they have from the likes of Sony and Bose. Those headphones sound good for what they are, but they don't sound good for kind of audiophile headphones. And I think that's going to be the biggest competition that this thing faces is audiophile grade headphones, especially because this thing is coming in at over $500. Now, if you hear that and you're shocked, you haven't spent a lot of time around high-end headphones because the prices of high-end headphones can get ridiculous. Not just $1,000, not just $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 even. And if you want to go all the way towards the top end, towards something like a Sennheiser HE1, that headphone is $60,000. So $500 for a actual high fidelity sound signature is not too bad. And Apple claims that it is a high fidelity sound signature, even though that term is so overutilized in marketing by audio companies that it's basically at this point a joke. But here's kind of my true thoughts on this. I think that this is going to probably sound good. I don't think that it's going to compete with wired headphones. I mean, in that price range, you got a lot of stuff a little bit below and a little bit above for price that are exceptional headphones. You have the DT1990 from Beyerdynamic, the Sennheiser HC660S. You have things like the Anando, which are around that price range, the Odyssey LCD2C. I don't see any world in which a closed-back headphone sounds better than, a 1990 or an LCD2C. I'd be very happy to be surprised, but I don't anticipate that. Now, in the world of closed-back Bluetooth headphones, This is actually one of the more expensive options that aren't real niche headphones from very specific companies. Now, because this is priced higher, I think the most basic level question that I have is this going to sound better or be a better device than all of the other options? Outside of one headphone, I would generally say yes to both. I think Apple is very good at devices that are very good at being devices. AirPods Pro never sounded the best for the money, but it was always one of the better devices that you could get as a whole. I think the Max is going to fit that same role. I think it's probably going to be one of the better wireless devices that are out there. In terms of sound quality, I also think it's going to beat most of the competition given Apple's current tuning. It's fairly good. Their history and track record with creating a tuning that is enjoyable to the vast majority of people. Enjoyable being the key word, not technically precise, not the best, not the cleanest, not the most analytical, not the highest fidelity, just enjoyable. I think they're pretty good there. There is a headphone on the horizon that isn't technically out yet, which is the Drop THX Panda, which I have reviewed. That thing has incredible sound quality as a closed back Bluetooth headphone, and I think it's $400. Build quality will not be better than the Apple. The connectivity and the options like spatial audio won't beat that. But that Panda uses THX technology, amplifiers in it, and a kind of rounded planar magnetic driver. And that thing is very unique in the price because of the way that it sounds. So I think right now, from kind of an outside bird's eye view of this, if you're okay with audio that is maybe not the absolute pinnacle and you want all of the other features of a high quality Bluetooth headphone, the Apple's probably going to be the way to go. As of right now, I'm optimistic of it. I'm probably not going to buy one though, just because I don't have a need for a Bluetooth headphone. I work from home like a lot of people nowadays. So, having a wireless closed back headphone doesn't really serve much purpose. I use the AirPods Pro for calls, and then I got a ton of high-end headphones over here that I would rather use than a closed back Bluetooth one. So that's my thoughts. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'm curious what you think this is going to end up like. Are you going to pick one up, or is this type of product not really appealing at this current time? Now, if I do get a lot of requests, I'll buy it and review it, or my curiosity might just get the best of me, and then I'll buy it and review it anyways. Okay, guys, I think that's going to wrap it up. Thank you very much for watching. Until the next video, my name is Josh, signing off.